When I got on the train, the conductor suddenly leaned over and whispered, "Pretend you're feeling sick and get off the train, right now." I smiled. I thought it was a joke, but she grabbed my hand and begged, "Trust me, I'm begging you." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you were listening in the comments. I carried the salad bowl through the doorway, and their whispering stopped, just like that. Hazel and Saul stood at the kitchen counter, frozen mid-conversation, wearing expressions I'd seen on students caught plagiarizing, guilty surprise masked quickly by false innocence. "Dinner's ready," I said, setting the bowl on the dining table. Hazel smiled too brightly. "Thanks, Dad. Smells wonderful." They followed me to the table, taking their usual seats. 3 days until our planned trip to Washington, and the air felt wrong, dense, like humidity before a thunderstorm. I passed the salad to Saul, watched him serve himself without meeting my eyes. We ate in silence for several minutes, fork scraping plate, ice settling in glasses. The grandfather clock in the hallway marked time with its steady tick. Hazel kept glancing at Saul, some unspoken communication passing between them. Saul poured himself a second glass of wine, then a third. His shoulders loosened. He leaned back in his chair, gestured with his fork. "Well, soon there'll be changes around here," he said, voice carrying that edge of wine-fueled confidence. "We'll finally be able to live like real people, not like—" "Saul!" Hazel's interruption came sharp as a slap. She forced a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Dad doesn't want to hear about your boring job hunt." I set down my fork carefully. "What changes are you talking about?" Saul's face went blank. He drank more wine. "Nothing, just possibilities. Opportunities." "Opportunities for what?" Hazel reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Her palm felt clammy. "Dad, you're imagining things. We're just excited about the trip." Saul finally looked at me. "Yeah, just, stressed about money stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But 35 years of teaching history had trained me to read between lines, to spot the gaps in narratives students hoped I wouldn't notice. And this narrative had gaps wide enough to drive a truck through. I withdrew my hand gently, finished my meal, excused myself to the study. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Sleep had been thin, restless. I pulled on my robe and descended the stairs, moving quietly out of old habit. The house still held its nighttime hush. I was halfway down the hallway when I heard Hazel's voice drifting from the study. The door stood slightly ajar, golden light spilling across the hardwood floor. "Just 2 more days." Her voice was low, controlled. A pause. "Then everything changes forever." I froze, coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips. Another pause. She was on the phone. "No, he suspects nothing. It'll look completely natural." My heart hammered against my ribs. The rational part of my brain scrambled for innocent explanations. But the analytical part, the part that had dissected historical conspiracies and political machinations for decades, was already assembling darker possibilities. The study door opened wider. Hazel emerged, phone pressed to her chest, and nearly collided with me. "Dad!" Her eyes went wide. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep." I kept my voice steady, curious but not accusatory. "Everything all right?" She recovered quickly, tucking the phone into her pocket. "I was just talking to Rebecca about a surprise we're planning, for you, on the trip." "A surprise?" "Nothing big, just something special." She touched my arm, smiled. "Don't worry about it." She moved past me toward the kitchen, leaving me standing in the hallway with cooling coffee and racing thoughts. Over the next 2 days, I watched, not obviously, not confrontationally. Just observed the way I'd taught students to observe primary sources, carefully, looking for patterns, noting inconsistencies. Saul and Hazel huddled over his laptop in the living room that afternoon. I walked in carrying my book, intending to read in my armchair. The laptop snapped shut so fast the sound echoed. "Just checking train schedules," Saul said. "We already have tickets." "Right, just confirming times." The next day I found them in the kitchen, bent over papers spread across the counter. When I entered, Hazel swept them into a folder. "Boring financial stuff," she said. "Anything I should know about?" "Just organizing some documents, trip planning." But their body language told different stories. The way they sat too close, whispering. how they sprang apart when I approached, the papers hastily shuffled, screens quickly darkened. Each time, thin explanations about trip logistics or mundane household matters. I was a fool, or I was paranoid, or I was seeing exactly what my experience told me I was seeing. That final night before departure, I sat alone in my study. The 3 train tickets lay on my desk. A Acela Express to Washington first class, departing 10:47 a.m. I'd paid for them myself, birthday gift to Hazel. She'd been so enthusiastic about a family trip, quality time together, quality time. I picked up the tickets, turned them over in my hands. I should cancel. Every instinct screamed warning. Something felt profoundly wrong with this entire situation. But running wouldn't give me answers. Confronting them directly would only make them defensive, drive whatever this was underground where I couldn't see it. I needed to know, needed to understand what was happening in my own house, with my own daughter, under my own roof. 35 years teaching students to analyze evidence and patterns. 35 years learning that when people act secretive, they have secrets. When they whisper and hide papers and shut laptops too quickly, they're concealing something they don't want you to know. I placed the tickets back on the desk. Tomorrow, I'd go on this trip. I'd create opportunities for real conversation, for clearing the air. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe stress and financial pressure had them acting strangely, and this trip would reset everything. Maybe. I packed my small travel bag methodically, each folded shirt, each rolled pair of socks, a deliberate exercise in convincing myself everything was normal, that I wasn't afraid, that I could trust my own daughter. I carried the bag downstairs and set it by the front door. The hallway was dim, lit only by the streetlight filtering through the window. The house was silent except for the clock and my breathing. From upstairs came muffled voices, Hazel and Saul talking behind their closed bedroom door. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, listening. Couldn't make out words, just the rise and fall of conversation, urgent and low. I stood there for a long time, hand on the newel post, staring at my packed bag in the shadows. Tomorrow would bring answers. I just didn't know how terrible those answers would be. The morning light streamed through the high arched windows of 30th Street Station, casting long shadows across the marble floor. The grand concourse echoed with announcements and the roll of luggage wheels. Business people hurried past. Tourists consulted phones. Families dragged sleepy children toward their tracks. I walked slowly, my small bag in hand, watching Hazel and Saul 20 feet ahead. They moved with purpose, almost urgency, glancing back occasionally to make sure I was following. "We should hurry, Dad." Hazel checked her phone again, the 4th time since we'd entered the station. "The train boards in 15 minutes. "Yeah." Saul's voice was quiet, tense. "Don't want to miss it?" I caught up to them at the base of the escalator leading to the tracks. "We have plenty of time. What's the rush?" Hazel's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just excited, looking forward to the trip." But her hand gripped her phone too tightly. Saul's jaw was set in a way that suggested anything but vacation anticipation. That same dense feeling from dinner 3 nights ago pressed against my chest like a weight. We descended to the platform level. The Acela Express waited beside track 7, sleek and silver, humming with electric readiness. A handful of passengers were already boarding. Hazel and Saul climbed the steps first, tickets in hand, and disappeared into the train car. Through the windows, I watched them choose seats, settle in, place their bags in the overhead compartment. They moved with practiced coordination. I approached the steps, ticket ready. A conductor appeared in front of me. A woman in her 50s, wearing the standard uniform, her expression serious. She stepped close, closer than typical professional distance. "Sir," she said quietly, urgently, "pretend you're feeling ill and leave this train." I blinked. "Excuse me? I think you have me confused." Her hand gripped my arm. Her eyes were wide, frightened, not for herself, but for me. "Trust me, please." I heard them talking about an accident and inheritance. "Your life is in danger." Time seemed to slow. The station noise faded to a distant hum. My heart stopped, restarted, began hammering. I looked past her through the train door. Hazel and Saul sat together in facing seats, both staring at me. Not with concern, not with impatience, with something else entirely. Anticipation. Everything from the past 3 days crystallized in that instant. The overheard phone call. Everything changes forever. He suspects nothing. Completely natural. The whispered conversations. The nervous energy that wasn't excitement, but calculation. Saul's wine-loosened comment about changes in living like real people. My professor's mind, trained to assemble evidence into coherent narratives, completed the picture in seconds. They were planning to kill me, not hypothetically, not eventually, today. On this train, an accident that would look natural, yield an inheritance, solve their financial problems. My own daughter. The conductor, her name tag read Lillian, was watching me, waiting. Around us, passengers continued boarding. A voice over the intercom announced final call for the Acela Express to Washington. I had perhaps 30 seconds to decide. I clutched my chest, let my knees buckle slightly, grabbed the handrail for support. "Help!" Lillian's voice rang out across the platform. "Medical assistance needed." Passengers turned, station staff appeared. Someone steadied me from behind. Lillian supported my other arm, her performance convincing because her concern was genuine. Hazel jumped from her seat, rushed to the train door. "Dad!" I waved her back, my voice deliberately weak. "Go ahead, it's just stress. I'll catch the next train." "Dad, we should stay." Saul appeared behind her. His hand gripped her shoulder, firm and controlling. He leaned close, said something I couldn't hear. His face was unreadable. The conductor, a different one, a young man, called out, "Doors closing, all aboard." Hazel hesitated, torn between whatever script they'd planned and the unexpected deviation. Saul's hand tightened on her shoulder. He pulled her gently backward into the car. The doors slid shut. I stood on the platform, supported by Lillian and a station security officer. Through the window, I watched Saul guide Hazel back to their seats. She was talking rapidly, gesturing. He shook his head, said something brief. The train began to move, slowly at first, then gathering speed. The silver cars slid past, one after another. Windows full of passengers reading newspapers, checking phones, settling in for the journey south. The last car passed. The train curved away toward the tunnel, its sound fading, becoming nothing. The crowd dispersed. The security officer asked if I needed an ambulance. I assured him I was fine, just a moment of dizziness, probably didn't eat enough breakfast. He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his post. I was alone on the platform with Lillian. The silence felt enormous. "Are you really all right, sir?" Her voice was soft now, sad. My voice came out hollow. "I need a minute. Thank you. You may have just saved my life." She nodded slowly. "I've worked this line 20 years. I know the difference between trip planning and conspiracy. I'm sorry." "How did you hear them?" "They were in the waiting area upstairs, thought they were alone. I was checking schedules nearby. They were specific about what would happen. Too specific." She paused. "I almost didn't say anything, didn't want to believe what I was hearing. But I couldn't let you board, couldn't live with myself if—" She didn't finish, didn't need to. "Thank you," I said again. She squeezed my arm gently, then left me there, returning to her duties. I stood on the empty platform, my bag still in my hand. The distant rumble of the departed train faded into the ambient noise of the station above. Announcements, footsteps, the city's constant hum. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from Hazel. "Dad, are you okay? Call us." I stared at the screen. My hand was steady. Steadier than it should be after learning your daughter tried to murder you. The shock was wearing off. Beneath it, something colder was crystallizing, something analytical, strategic. They thought I was vulnerable, easy to eliminate. They thought I suspected nothing. They'd miscalculated. I pocketed the phone without responding and walked toward the escalator. My legs felt solid beneath me. My mind was already working, sorting through options, planning steps. First, get home without them knowing I know. Act confused, concerned, apologetic for ruining the trip. Maintain the facade. Second, find proof. Document everything. They'd been careless these past few days, confident in their deception. That carelessness would continue. Third, decide what comes next. The victim phase was over before it truly began. The strategist phase had begun. The taxi wound through Philadelphia streets, past brownstones and corner markets, morning traffic building. I sat in the back seat watching the city pass, my phone buzzing intermittently in my pocket. Hazel's texts. I didn't look. 20 minutes from 30th Street Station to Chestnut Hill. The driver pulled up to my house. Empty driveway, quiet street. I paid him, climbed out, stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the place I'd lived for 30 years. My daughter wanted me dead. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside. The silence was complete. They were somewhere south of Baltimore by now, speeding toward Washington, believing they'd failed but could try again. I set my bag down in the entryway, took a careful breath. The shock was fading. Something sharper was taking its place. Clarity. I went to my study, closed the door, sat at my desk, pulled out a notebook, the leather-bound one I used for research projects, opened to a blank page, forced myself to think like the historian I'd trained to be for 4 decades. Evidence, patterns, timeline. I began writing. 6 months ago, Hazel started mentioning money troubles frequently. 4 months ago, Saul began asking pointed questions about my will, my assets, my plans for the estate. 3 months ago, they suggested moving in temporarily to save on rent. 2 months ago, Saul brought home bank documents that needed signing, routine account updates, he said. I stopped writing. Bank documents. The file cabinet key was in my desk drawer. I retrieved it, crossed to the cabinet against the wall, unlocked it, found the folder labeled Insurance. There it was. Life insurance policy dated 5 weeks ago. Coverage amount, $500,000. Beneficiaries, Hazel Spencer and Saul Gardner. My signature at the bottom looked genuine because it was genuine. The bank documents. I'd signed without reading carefully, trusting my son-in-law. My hands didn't shake as I photographed every page with my phone. Clinical documentation. That's what this was now. I returned to my desk, picked up my phone, dialed the insurance company number printed on the policy. Guardian Life Insurance, how may I help you? Yes, hello? I kept my voice friendly, slightly confused. Just an elderly man seeking clarification. My name is Morris Spencer. I have a policy with you, and I'm trying to confirm some details. My memory isn't what it used to be. Of course, Mr. Spencer. Let me pull up your account. Keyboard sounds. Yes, I have it here. Policy activated March 15th. $500,000 in coverage. Beneficiaries listed as Hazel Spencer and Saul Gardner. Is there something you'd like to change? No, just wanted to confirm the details. The premium was paid in full? Yes, sir. Annual premium of $8,400 paid in full on activation date. I thanked her, hung up. Pulled up my bank statements on my computer. March 16th, Saul withdrew $8,400 from my account. Transaction note, home repairs. No repairs had been done. I made a second call. Washington General Hospital. Good morning, this is Washington General. Hello, I'm trying to locate my daughter. She was supposed to visit today. Hazel Gardner. I'm concerned because she's not answering her phone. Let me check our visitor logs. A pause. Yes, a Hazel Gardner did inquire at the information desk about 2 hours ago, asking about a patient named Morris Spencer. My breath caught. What did you tell her? We informed her no one by that name was admitted. She seemed relieved, actually. Then she left with a man who was with her. That's my daughter. She worries too much. Thank you for checking. I ended the call, set the phone down carefully on the desk. They'd gone to Washington expecting to identify my body. When they learned I wasn't there, they'd abandoned the trip, relieved the plan had failed, but already recalculating. I heard the front door open, voices in the entryway. They were back. I rose, arranged my face into something resembling pleasant surprise, and walked out of the study. Hazel dropped her bag when she saw me, rushed forward. Dad! I embraced her, felt her arms tight around me. For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed the concern was real. Then I looked over her shoulder at Saul, who stood watching with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're back, I smiled, patted Hazel's shoulder. I'm so sorry I ruined the trip. We were so worried. Her voice sounded genuine. Perhaps some part of her still was my daughter, buried under desperation and greed. Are you sure you're okay? The doctor said it was just stress. I released her, shook Saul's hand. His grip was firm, brief. We can try again next week. I promise I won't collapse this time. No rush. Saul's voice was carefully neutral. Your health comes first. They exchanged a glance. Quick, but I caught it. The look of conspirators recalculating strategy. "I'll make some tea," Hazel said, heading to the kitchen. I retreated to my study, closed the door, stood with my back against it. They'd try again. Different method, same ending. The afternoon dragged past. Dinner was quiet, civil. I excused myself early, claimed fatigue, climbed the stairs to my bedroom, changed into pajamas, lay on top of the covers, fully alert. Below, I heard their voices, low, urgent. Couldn't make out words through the floor, but I didn't need to. I stared at the ceiling in darkness, my mind working through options. The police. What would I tell them? My daughter helped me sign an insurance policy, and now I think she wants to kill me based on a conductor's warning? They'd call it elder paranoia, suggest counseling, maybe even suggest I was experiencing cognitive decline. I needed proof, real, undeniable, documented proof. And then I needed something more than police involvement. I needed justice, my own kind. The voices downstairs finally went silent. I heard footsteps on the stairs, their bedroom door closing. The house settled into quiet. I rose, moved to my window, looked out at the dark street. A streetlight cast yellow across wet pavement. My reflection stared back from the glass. A 64-year-old man who'd just discovered his own daughter wanted him dead. But the face looking back wasn't defeated. It was focused. Tomorrow I'd begin. Not as a victim. As an investigator. The transformation from hunted to hunter started now. Morning light filtered through the kitchen window. I sat at the breakfast table with Hazel and Saul, eating toast, reading the newspaper. The picture of normalcy. Inside, my mind ran through a checklist. Audio recordings, written evidence, witnesses, concrete, undeniable documentation. History is written by those who document it best. Time to become a documentarian of my own near murder. That afternoon, while Hazel was at her office job and Saul was out meeting investors, translation, drinking at a bar, I drove to an electronics store on Walnut Street. The clerk was young, helpful. Looking for anything specific? Voice-activated recorder for lectures. I smiled like a confused elderly man. Simple to operate. My hands aren't what they used to be. He showed me 3 models. I chose the middle option. Small enough to hide, simple enough to use, good battery life, paid cash, no paper trail. Back home, I studied the living room. Hazel and Saul spent most evenings on the couch facing the fireplace. The bookshelf to the right of the fireplace held my old history texts, philosophy books, novels I'd collected over decades. I positioned the recorder behind a row of biographies, 3rd shelf from the bottom, tested the angle. The microphone faced the couch perfectly. That night, I activated it before heading upstairs, claimed fatigue again, settled into bed, and waited. 2 nights later, I retrieved the device while they were both out, brought it to my study, closed the door, connected headphones. Hours of silence, television sounds, mundane conversation about groceries, bills, weather. Then, at the 3-hour mark, Saul's voice cut through, sharp with anger. The old man survived. How did that happen? Hazel's response came nervous, defensive. Bad luck, bad timing. We need another approach, something at home. An accident on the stairs, maybe. Old people fall all the time. Hazel, quieter now. I don't know if I can... You want out of debt or not? Saul's voice turned hard. He's got almost $1 million in assets. He could live 20 more years. We don't have 20 years. Silence. Then Hazel. Okay, but we have to be careful. I listened to this section 3 times. Each playback hardened something inside my chest. 3 days later, Saul made a mistake. He left his phone on the kitchen counter while showering. I heard the bathroom door close, water running through pipes. 5 minutes maybe, 6 at most. My hands were steady as I picked up the device. No passcode. Arrogant fool. I opened his messages, scrolled, found a thread with someone named Mike. Messages from 2 weeks ago. Need your help with something. What kind of help? Old man problem. Elaborate? Make it look like accident, stairs or something. How much? Half the insurance payout if you help. I photographed every message with my own phone. Returned Saul's device to its exact position, screen dark, same angle on the counter. 10 minutes later, Saul emerged, hair wet, grabbed his phone without suspicion. I sat reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened. That afternoon, I called Amtrak's customer service line. I want to thank a conductor who helped me during a medical emergency last week. Is there a way to reach her? They connected me to her supervisor, who patched me through to Lillian Warner. Mr. Spencer. Her voice carried immediate concern. How are you? Are you safe? For now, I need your help, Ms. Warner. Would you be willing to write down what you overheard that day? Everything you remember, for my records, for my protection. I'll do better than that. Her tone turned firm. I'll get it notarized. What they said made me sick. I'll mail it to you this week. My throat tightened with gratitude. Thank you. You may have saved my life. You saved your own life by listening. Be careful, Mr. Spencer. Next, I needed professional verification, proof of motive that would stand up under scrutiny. I searched the Pennsylvania State Licensing Database, found a private investigator with solid reviews and 20 years' experience. Called from a coffee shop payphone downtown. We met the following afternoon at a different coffee shop, corner table, away from windows. He was 50s, gray suit, quiet competence in his bearing. What do you need, Mr. Spencer? Financial background check, 2 people. I slid an envelope across the table, $800 cash. Credit reports, business loans, debt obligations, everything legal to access. He counted the bills, nodded. 1 week. 7 days later, a manila envelope arrived by courier. I signed for it, brought it to my study, locked the door. The report was thorough. Hazel, $67,000 in credit card debt across 6 cards. Saul, $95,000 in failed business loans, 3 different lenders, 2 collection agencies actively pursuing payment. Combined debt, $162,000. I read the entire report twice, making notes in my research notebook. Motive, undeniable, means they'd tried once, were planning to try again. Opportunity, I lived with them. They had access to me daily. 2 weeks after the train station incident, I sat in my study surrounded by evidence spread across my desk like artifacts in an archive. The audio recording of their conversation about stairs and accidents. Photographs of Saul's text messages about hiring Mike. Lillian's notarized statement, 3 pages, detailed and damning. The private investigator's financial report. The insurance policy with my genuine but deceived signature. It was enough. But enough for what? Police? I could press charges for conspiracy, but text messages could be explained away. Saul's lawyer would claim they were jokes, dark humor between friends. The recording might be inadmissible, obtained without consent. Even if charges stuck, what then? A trial dragging through years. Hazel and Saul declaring bankruptcy. Maybe some probation? No. I'd spent 35 years teaching students that justice and law aren't always the same thing. That sometimes the righteous outcome requires unconventional means. Sometimes you have to build your own justice. I opened my laptop, typed Pennsylvania state law into the search bar, page after page of legal text, revocable living trusts, beneficiary designations, estate planning strategies, probate processes. I took notes in my precise handwriting, filling pages with possibilities. Outside my study door, the house was dark. Upstairs, Hazel and Saul slept, believing their plan was still intact, believing they were safe. They had no idea the trap was already being built around them. I bookmarked a webpage, Estate Planning Attorneys, Philadelphia. Tomorrow, I'd make a call. The victim phase was over. The evidence collection phase was complete. The revenge phase was about to begin. Mid-April light streamed through tall windows overlooking Market Street. I sat in a leather chair across from Nelson Croft's desk, a manila folder in my lap. 3 days of research had led me here. Reviews, credentials, case histories. 20 years specializing in estate law. Exactly what I needed. I set the folder on the polished wood between us. Thank you for seeing me on short notice, Mr. Croft. He nodded, professional composure in place. You mentioned this was urgent. What can I help you with? I opened the folder, began laying out evidence piece by piece. The insurance policy first. $500,000. Beneficiaries I never intended. Then Lillian's notarized statement. 3 pages detailing what she had overheard. The photographed text messages next, each screenshot clear and damning. The private investigator's financial report, showing debt like an anchor around their necks. Finally, I pulled out my phone, connected it to the small speaker I'd brought. This recording was made in my living room 2 weeks ago. I pressed play. Saul's voice filled the office, angry and clear. The old man survived. How did that happen? Nelson's professional mask slipped slightly. Hazel's nervous response. Bad luck, bad timing. Then Saul again, cold as winter. We need another approach, something at home. An accident on the stairs, maybe. Old people fall all the time. I stopped the recording. The silence felt heavy. Nelson leaned back in his chair, processing. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Mr. Spencer, this is attempted murder conspiracy. We could take this to police right now. And what would they do? I kept my tone measured. Recordings obtained without consent might be inadmissible. Text messages could be explained as dark jokes between friends. Even with Lillian's statement, it's circumstantial. A good defense attorney would shred it. He nodded slowly. He knew I was right. So what do you want? My answer came immediately. I want to protect my assets legally, make it impossible for them to benefit from my death. Can you do that? Nelson studied me for a long moment. Then he pulled his keyboard closer. Yes, I can do that. He explained the strategy. A revocable living trust. I would transfer all assets, house, investments, bank accounts, into the trust's name. I'd remain trustee with full control during my lifetime. But upon death, assets wouldn't pass through probate to legal heirs. They'd go directly to beneficiaries I designated. An educational foundation, Nelson suggested. Legitimate, clean, legally unassailable. And my daughter gets nothing unless you specifically name her as beneficiary. He met my eyes. Which you won't. How long? 2 weeks to draft documents, get everything filed and recorded. They won't know until it's done. Trust documents are confidential. Perfect. The next 2 weeks passed in careful, deliberate steps. I met Nelson 3 more times, reviewing documents, signing papers, my initials and margins, everything witnessed and notarized. I visited my bank, moved accounts into the trust's name. The county recorder's office filed the deed transferring my house. All done quietly, professionally, without drama. At home, I maintained perfect normalcy. Set the dinner table each evening, asked Hazel about work, listened to Saul's vague mentions of business prospects, showed no hint that I was systematically removing everything they were trying to steal. 2 weeks after that first meeting, Nelson called. It's complete, filed, legally binding. That evening, I waited until we were halfway through dinner. Then, casually, as if mentioning the weather, "Oh, I meant to mention, I transferred the house into a trust last week. Tax optimization, mostly." Saul's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What does that mean exactly?" His voice was carefully controlled. I took a sip of water, smiled mildly. "Estate planning? The house is now held in trust. When I die, it passes directly to the designated beneficiary, not through probate. Banks can't touch it for heir debts. Creditors can't claim it." "Who's the beneficiary?" Hazel's voice had gone tight. "An educational foundation. I'm setting it up next week." The silence stretched. Saul set his fork down slowly. Hazel stared at her plate. I finished my meal, excused myself. "I'm tired. Think I'll turn in early." I climbed the stairs to my room, closed the door, but didn't undress. Instead, I sat in the darkness, door cracked slightly, listening. 20 minutes. That's how long it took. Saul's voice erupted first, loud enough to carry. "What happened? How did he know?" Hazel's response came panicked. "I don't know. Someone must have warned him. The insurance payout is useless if we can't get the house assets. That's where the real money is. He just cut us out completely." Their voices continued, accusations flying, recriminations, desperate recalculations of ruined plans. I sat in my dark room and allowed myself a thin smile, first blood drawn. They were wounded now, confused, scrambling. The hunter had become the hunted. I pulled out my phone, texted Nelson. "Need to discuss next steps. Available tomorrow?" His response came within minutes. 10 a.m., my office. I set the phone down, finally allowed myself to breathe deeply. The game had truly begun now. 3 days after the dinner revelation, the house had become a cold battlefield. Hazel and Saul spoke to me in clipped, formal tones. No more pretense of warmth. I moved through my own home like a man in enemy territory, which, I reflected grimly, I was. Early May morning, I came downstairs for coffee. Noticed the staircase was wet, water glistening on wooden steps, no bucket visible, no mop. Saul emerged from the kitchen, saw me looking. "Oh, I mopped earlier. Must have used too much water." Our eyes met. I nodded slowly, gripped the banister firmly, descended carefully. First attempt. Obvious, desperate. Over the next 2 weeks, the stairs were wet 3 more times. I started using the back staircase exclusively. Then Hazel began pushing vitamins. Special supplements she'd bought, she said, for my health and stress. She'd set them beside my breakfast plate each morning. Watch until I took them. "They'll help you feel better, Dad. You've been so tense lately." I swallowed them dutifully, thanked her, but something felt wrong. The nervous energy in her eyes, the insistence. When she wasn't looking, I palmed them. Collected a week's worth in a plastic bag hidden in my desk drawer. I found a private medical laboratory across town, paid $200 cash, left a phone number, no name. 5 days later, the results came back. Zolpidem, prescription sleep medication, 50 milligrams per pill, triple the normal dose. Enough to cause dangerous sedation, confusion, falls. My own daughter was drugging me. I drove to Nelson's office, brought the lab report and the bag of doctored vitamins. He examined the documentation, his face hardening. "This is attempted poisoning, assault. We contact police now." Still circumstantial. I kept my voice steady. "She'll claim she bought them thinking they were legitimate supplements, didn't know they were tainted. The investigation would take months. Meanwhile, I'm living with people actively trying to kill me." I leaned forward. "I want them out of my house. Now. Is there a legal way?" Nelson considered this. "They've been living with you 3 years without a lease?" "Informal arrangement. Temporary, they said." He pulled up Pennsylvania tenant law on his computer, scrolled through statutes. "No written lease means they're tenants at will. You can terminate the arrangement with 30 days written notice. After that, if they refuse to leave, you petition for eviction through the sheriff." "How fast can you draft the notice?" "This afternoon." 2 hours later, I sat in Nelson's office reviewing the document. 30-day notice to vacate premises. Simple language, legal, official. No accusations required. Pennsylvania law allowed termination of at-will tenancy without stating cause. I signed. Nelson made copies, prepared them for formal service. "You need to hand these to them directly," he instructed. "Make sure it's documented." They should hear this from me. I returned home that afternoon. Hazel and Saul were in the living room, watching television. My heart hammered, but my hands were steady. "I need to give you both something." I handed each of them an envelope. Hazel opened hers first. I watched comprehension dawn, confusion, then shock. "Dad, what is this?" My voice was firm. "Notice to vacate. You have 30 days to find other housing. On day 31, if you're still here, the sheriff will remove you." Hazel's shock turned to tears. "We're your family. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go." She reached for me. I stepped back. "Family doesn't poison family." I pulled out the lab report, threw it on the coffee table. "I had your vitamins tested. 50 milligrams of sleep medication per pill, enough to make me fall, to have an accident, just like Saul wanted." Saul's face went white, then red. "That's ridiculous. You're paranoid." I threw down the printed text messages. "Plan B, make it look like a fall. Your words to Mike. Don't insult me by lying." Absolute silence. Hazel stared at the evidence. Saul's jaw worked, but no words came. 30 days, I said. Pack your things. If you're here on day 31, you'll be arrested for trespassing. I turned, walked to my study, locked the door behind me. Through the wood, I heard Hazel's crying intensify. Saul's voice rose, furious and indistinct. I sat at my desk, hands finally shaking now that the confrontation was over. I'd crossed a line, made my move public. They knew I had evidence now, knew I'd protected my assets, knew they'd lost. But cornered animals are most dangerous. I pulled out my phone, texted Nelson. "It's done. They know." Next steps? His response came quickly. "Be careful next 30 days. Document everything. Call police if any threats." I typed back, "Understood." The next 30 days would be a siege. I looked at my study door, solid oak, good lock. For the next month, this room became my fortress. Outside, my daughter and son-in-law were planning their next move. So was I. Mid-June. 1 week before the eviction deadline expired. The doorbell rang while I sat in my study reviewing documents. A process server stood on my porch, official envelope in hand. I signed, closed the door, opened the envelope. Court petition. My blood went cold as I read the header. Petition for determination of incapacity, Morris Spencer. I scanned the text rapidly. Hazel Spencer and Saul Gardner were petitioning to have me declared mentally incompetent due to psychological disorders, paranoid delusions, and inability to manage affairs. If successful, they'd become my legal guardians, control over my assets, control over my life. The petition claimed I'd exhibited erratic behavior, unfounded accusations against family, and irrational decision-making. 3 witnesses listed, all friends of Saul's, names I didn't recognize. Their affidavits described observing me making bizarre statements and appearing confused and disoriented. Complete fabrication, but official, filed, hearing date set for 10 days from now. Brilliant strategy, vicious execution. If they couldn't inherit naturally, they'd have the court grant them control while I was still alive. I called Nelson immediately. They're trying to have me declared incompetent. I scanned the petition, emailed it. 20 minutes later, he called back, voice tight with controlled anger. This is fraudulent witness testimony, potentially perjury, but we need to take it seriously. If the judge even partially believes them, they could get temporary guardianship pending evaluation. What do we need? Medical evaluation, full psychiatric assessment from a licensed professional, documentation proving you're completely competent. Before the hearing, Nelson arranged an appointment with Dr. Rebecca Chen, a forensic psychiatrist who specialized in competency evaluations. I met her the next day. Her office was professional, calm. She conducted a thorough assessment, cognitive tests, memory evaluation, psychological screening, questions about daily functioning. 3 hours. At the end, she reviewed findings with me, her manner professional but warm. Mr. Spencer, you scored in the superior range on all cognitive measures, memory, judgment, reasoning, all excellent. There's absolutely no indication of mental illness, dementia, or impairment. Relief washed through me. Can you document that for court? I'll have my written report ready in 2 days. Nelson and I spent the next week preparing, not just Dr. Chen's evaluation, but everything I'd gathered, the audio recordings, the text messages, Lillian's statement, the lab report on the doctored vitamins, the fraudulent insurance policy. They want to paint you as paranoid? Nelson's strategy was clear. We'll prove you had legitimate reasons for every action. We'll prove they're the dangerous ones. The hearing took place in family court. Hazel and Saul sat with their attorney, a young man who looked increasingly uncomfortable. Nelson and I sat across the aisle. Judge Patricia Warren, stern in 60s, reviewed the petition. Counselor, present your case. The attorney called Saul's friends. Under questioning, their testimony crumbled. They'd met me twice, briefly. Their descriptions of my erratic behavior were vague, unconvincing. Then Nelson presented Dr. Chen's evaluation, comprehensive, professional, devastating. Judge Warren read it carefully, her expression hardening. But Nelson didn't stop there. Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to present additional context. She nodded. He played the audio recording. Saul's voice filled the silent courtroom. An accident on the stairs. Old people fall all the time. Presented the text messages about hiring someone for Plan B. Shared Lillian's notarized statement. Showed the lab report proving the vitamins contained dangerous sedatives. The silence was absolute. Judge Warren's face transformed from neutral attention to open disgust. This petition is not just unfounded, it's malicious. It wastes this court's resources. She paused, looked directly at me. Mr. Spencer, you have grounds for criminal charges. I encourage you to consider it. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll consider my options. Petition denied. Outside, Nelson and I stood in June sunshine. Hazel and Saul emerged minutes later, their attorney already gone. Hazel wouldn't meet my eyes. Saul's face was crimson with fury and humiliation. They walked to their car without speaking. Do you want to pursue criminal charges? Nelson asked. The judge practically invited you to. I shook my head slowly. The legal system is too slow, too uncertain. I have something better. That evening, I returned to my empty house. Tomorrow was their final day. They'd be gone. But the revenge was far from complete. I sat at my computer, began searching. Inheritance Advance Loans, Pennsylvania. Credit applications using relative's address. Financial fraud reporting. My fingers moved across the keyboard with purpose. They'd tried to destroy me, legally, financially, physically, failed at all three. Now I'd show them what real destruction looked like. Not through violence, through information, through exposure, through the systematic collapse of every lie they'd built their borrowed lives upon. I opened a new document, began making a list. Justice, I'd learned, isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. And consequences were coming, early July, 3 days after they moved out. I sat at my desk, reviewing financial records obtained through Nelson, public documents, credit reports, court filings, looking for vulnerabilities, pressure points, ways their desperation might have left them exposed. Then I found it. A loan document from Heritage Trust Bank, filed as public record. Loan type, Inheritance Advance, $45,000. I stared at this. Saul had borrowed against my estate, against money he assumed he'd receive when I died. The audacity was breathtaking. The vulnerability was perfect. I called Nelson. Saul took out an inheritance advance loan, $45,000 borrowed against my estate. Silence. Then, can we notify the bank he won't inherit anything? That's exactly what I want to do. The bank will demand immediate repayment, alternative collateral. He'll have no way to pay. My voice was cold. Good. Nelson drafted a formal letter with supporting documents. My trust showing the educational foundation as sole beneficiary. Legal statement that Saul Gardner would inherit nothing. Heritage Trust Bank received it within 2 days. Their response came fast. A demand letter to Saul. The inheritance securing his loan no longer existed. Therefore, the loan was in default. Immediate repayment of $45,000 required, or alternative collateral within 15 days. I received a courtesy copy. Saul had nothing. No assets, no collateral, just debt. The bank would sue, win judgment, pursue wage garnishment, first domino falling. While researching Saul's finances, I noticed something else. Hazel's credit report showed multiple cards issued in the past 2 years, all listing my Chestnut Hill address as her residence. High limits, $15,000, $12,000, $18,000. She'd used my address to appear more creditworthy, to suggest she lived in an expensive house. The credit companies granted higher limits based on this false information. Credit application fraud. I documented everything. Applications showing my address, eviction notice proving she hadn't legally lived there, my statement that I'd never authorized use of my address. Through Nelson, I contacted Chase, Capital One, and Citibank. Provided documentation showing fraudulent address usage. The companies investigated rapidly. Credit fraud is serious. Within 10 days, all three sent Hazel letters. Her limits were reduced to reflect actual financial situation. And, due to fraudulent application information, they were accelerating payment schedules. She must pay $28,000 total within 30 days, or face default judgments. She didn't have $28,000. She barely had $800. The calls started arriving. First Hazel, voice tearful. Dad, please, the bank is suing Saul. My credit cards are demanding money we don't have. We're drowning. Please, I'm sorry. We're sorry. Just help us. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Then Saul, voice harder. Morris, you're killing us. You've made your point. Now fix this. Call off the banks. I deleted the message. More calls followed over the next week. Pleading, angry, desperate, manipulative. I ignored them all. They'd tried to kill me. Tried to steal my life's work. Now they were experiencing consequences. I felt no sympathy. Late July evening, I heard pounding on my front door. Loud, aggressive. I looked through the window. Saul, clearly intoxicated, flushed and swaying. Morris, open up! You're going to fix this. I didn't open the door. Called 911 instead. There's an intoxicated man threatening me at my front door. Saul continued yelling, pounding. You can't do this. You're destroying us. I'll make you... He didn't finish the threat. Police arrived within 8 minutes. I provided documentation, the eviction, the court case, the threatening voicemails. Officers removed Saul, who was belligerent and threatening. "You should get a restraining order," one suggested. "I'll file tomorrow morning." Next day, Nelson and I went to court for an emergency protection from abuse order. I presented evidence: Saul's late-night visit, threatening statements, voicemails, the history of attempted harm. The judge granted a temporary order immediately. Saul must stay 500 feet away from me, my home, my property. Violation meant immediate arrest. The order was served on Saul that afternoon. I returned home, finally feeling secure. My house was mine again. My assets were protected, and my enemies were systematically destroying themselves through the weight of their own lies and debts. That evening, I made myself dinner in the quiet house. The silence felt different now, not empty, but peaceful. My phone sat on the counter, face down, still receiving calls from blocked numbers. I didn't check them. Outside, July sun set over Chestnut Hill, casting long shadows. I ate slowly, thinking about Hazel and Saul across town, drowning in debt, facing lawsuits, legally prohibited from approaching me. None of it was revenge. It was simply exposure. I didn't create their debts, didn't forge credit applications, didn't lie to banks about expected inheritance. I merely revealed the truth. They built their lives on lies and theft. I just removed the foundation. But something still nagged at me. They were suffering financially, yes. Legally restrained, yes, but still free. Still able to spread their version of events. Play victims. There was one more move to make, one final piece. Tomorrow, I'd call Nelson. The endgame was approaching. Early August, 2 weeks after the restraining order, an email arrived with the subject line, "Interview request, family dispute story." I opened it. A tabloid journalist wrote that he'd been contacted by Hazel Spencer and Saul Gardner regarding elder financial abuse and wanted my comment before publication. The email included their pitch. "Our elderly father has become paranoid and vindictive, cutting us off financially and using the legal system to punish us for imagined slights." Cold fury settled over me. They were rewriting history, painting themselves as victims, trying to destroy my reputation before I could destroy theirs. I forwarded the email to Nelson immediately. Within an hour, he called back. "They've contacted at least 3 outlets, 2 tabloids, and 1 local news station. They're positioning themselves as victims of elder abuse reversal, claiming you fabricated everything." His tone was grim. "If even one outlet publishes their version without fact-checking, it damages your reputation. We need to act preemptively." We spent the next 2 days assembling a comprehensive media package. Everything documented, organized, irrefutable. Audio recordings of Saul planning accidents. Text messages about Plan B. Lillian's notarized statement about overhearing murder conspiracy. Lab reports showing poison vitamins. The fraudulent insurance policy. Court documents from the dismissed incompetency petition. Judge Warren's statement calling their petition malicious. Nelson added a cover letter. Hazel and Saul attempted to murder Morris Spencer for inheritance. All evidence legally obtained and verified by courts. The package was devastating. Nelson contacted every media organization they had approached, plus the Philadelphia Inquirer's investigative desk. Each received the complete documentation with a simple message. Before publishing anything regarding Morris Spencer and his family, please review the attached evidence. The effect was immediate. The tabloids dropped the story. Too much legal liability. The TV station sent a polite decline. But the Inquirer's investigative reporter, Sarah Martinez, called Nelson. She wanted to write about it from the truth angle, inheritance murder plots, and how one man protected himself. 3 weeks later, the Philadelphia Inquirer published, "When Inheritance Becomes Motive, a Philadelphia Story." No names were used, but details were specific enough that anyone in our social circles would recognize them. The article described the planned train accident, the poison vitamins, the fraudulent insurance policy, the attempted incompetency petition, factual, well-sourced, devastating. The reporter interviewed Lillian, quoted court documents, presented evidence chronologically. The article ended, "The would-be victim chose legal protection over criminal prosecution, systematically dismantling the conspiracy through estate planning and civil procedures. Sometimes justice operates outside courtrooms. I heard through acquaintances that Hazel and Saul's reputations were ruined. Friends who'd believed their difficult father's story now knew the truth. Former associates distanced themselves. Saul's remaining business contacts disappeared. Hazel's social circle evaporated. They were pariahs, destroyed not by me directly, but by exposure of their own actions. I felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a sense of completion. The truth was now public record. No one would believe their victim narrative again. But I had one more step. Mid-August, I met with Nelson to officially modify my will. Pennsylvania law allows parents to disinherit children for documented cause. I provided that cause: attempted murder, fraud, elder abuse. The new will explicitly stated Hazel Spencer was excluded from inheritance due to documented attempts to cause testator's death for financial gain. Every asset, house, investments, pension, went to the newly established educational foundation. I named it the Margaret Spencer Memorial Scholarship Fund, after my late wife, for history students from low-income families. The will was signed, witnessed, filed, irrevocable. I drafted a letter to Hazel, not cruel, not gloating, just factual. You wanted my estate. You planned my death to get it. You failed. This is the consequence. You inherit nothing. The house, the investments, the pension, all goes to students who will actually value education and honest work. You have perhaps 30 years of working life ahead. Use it to earn your own money. Perhaps you'll learn to appreciate what honest effort means. I included a copy of the new will and one more document: an invoice for $12,000 in legal fees I'd incurred defending against their incompetency petition. Under Pennsylvania law, I had right to recover those costs. I wasn't demanding payment. They were bankrupt anyway. But I wanted her to see the full accounting of what her greed cost. I mailed it certified delivery. The next day, I stood at my mailbox watching the postal truck drive away with my final communication to Hazel. The August afternoon was warm, humid. Typical Philadelphia summer. I walked back to my house, noting the garden needed watering, the porch could use sweeping, mundane concerns of normal life resuming. Inside, my phone buzzed. Text from Nelson. Foundation paperwork ready. Can you come in tomorrow to make it official? I typed back, 10 a.m. works. I set the phone down, looked around my quiet house. The battle was essentially over. Hazel and Saul were bankrupt, unemployable in their fields, socially isolated, legally restrained from approaching me, and permanently disinherited. My assets were protected, my reputation cleared, my truth documented in public record. But one piece remained: building something positive from this wreckage. Tomorrow I'd establish the scholarship fund, not as revenge, not as victory, but as the actual purpose my wealth should serve: education, opportunity, the future. Late August, the day after I sent the letter, I sat in Nelson's conference room with foundation documents spread before me: articles of incorporation, tax-exempt status applications, scholarship criteria, board member designations. The Margaret Spencer Memorial Scholarship Fund was becoming real. Nelson explained the structure. Initial $50,000 establishes the fund. Annual contributions from your pension keep it growing. Upon your death, the entire estate transfers in. Students benefit forever. I signed each document carefully. Margaret taught history before illness took her. This would honor her memory properly. This is a better legacy than any inheritance could be, Nelson said. That's exactly the point. The foundation paperwork was filed with Pennsylvania's Department of State. Tax-exempt status granted within 2 weeks. I made the initial contribution from my investment accounts. Nelson helped recruit board members, 2 retired professors from Temple University, a nonprofit administrator, and himself as legal counsel. The fund was operational. First scholarships would be awarded next academic year. I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about Hazel and Saul anymore. It was about what my life's work should actually accomplish. Legacy through education, not inheritance through blood. Through inevitable social connections, I heard what became of them. They'd filed for bankruptcy in mid-August. Chapter 7, Total Liquidation. The court allowed them to keep basic necessities, old car, clothing, minimal household items. Everything else liquidated to pay creditors. They were living in a small apartment in a rough neighborhood, far from Chestnut Hill. Saul worked at a warehouse, loading trucks. Hazel worked as a cashier at a discount store, their debts restructured into a 7-year payment plan. Between bankruptcy and ruined reputations, they'd lost everything. The house they coveted, the money they schemed for, the social standing they pretended to have, any hope of easy wealth. I felt no triumph, just recognition that consequences had arrived. Early September, I invited Lillian Warner to a coffee shop near 30th Street Station. We hadn't seen each other since the courthouse testimony months ago. She arrived in casual clothes, between shifts. "You saved my life that day," I told her. "Without your warning, I'd have been on that train. Whatever they planned would have worked." She was modest. "I just couldn't stay silent. What I heard was wrong." I slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a check for $5,000. "You risked your job, your safety, to warn a stranger. This isn't payment, it's gratitude." She started to refuse, but I insisted. "Please, you gave me something priceless. Let me give you something practical." She accepted tearfully. First week of September, my phone buzzed during breakfast. Unknown number. The message: "Dad, I'm sorry for everything. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. H." I read it twice. My finger hovered over the reply button. I thought about everything: the whispered conversations, the poison vitamins, the wet stares, the insurance policy, the attempted incompetency petition, the media manipulation. I thought about the daughter I raised, the woman she became, the choices she made. I set the phone down without responding. The apology might be genuine, probably was. Desperation often births sincerity. But apologies made after consequences arrive aren't really apologies. They're regrets at being caught, remorse at outcomes, not actual change of character. If she'd been sorry when she planned it, she wouldn't have acted. The time for sorry was before, not after. I walked through Chestnut Hill on a clear September morning. The neighborhood I'd lived in for 30 years looked different now, brighter somehow. Neighbors waved, shopkeepers greeted me. Some probably read the Inquirer article, connected the details. But I saw respect in their eyes, not pity. I'd protected myself, fought back legally, properly, successfully. My phone stayed in my pocket, Hazel's text unanswered. Maybe in years she'd understand why, maybe not. It wasn't my concern anymore. Back home, I made coffee, sat on my porch. The September air was crisp, autumn approaching. I thought about the past 6 months, the train station warning, the evidence gathering, the legal maneuvering, the financial exposure, the media battle, the final disinheritance. I could have died. Instead, I built something. Not just protection, purpose. The scholarship fund would outlive me, help students I'd never meet, honor Margaret's memory meaningfully. Hazel wanted my estate. She got nothing. But the estate itself would matter now, educating the next generation of historians. Justice isn't about revenge. It's about right outcomes, setting things straight, ensuring actions have appropriate consequences, and good resources go to good purposes. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, prepared for my day. Lunch with an old colleague, foundation paperwork to review, groceries to buy. Normal life resumed. My phone was on the counter, Hazel's text still unanswered, and it would stay that way. I'd learned something through all this. Fairness doesn't arrive uninvited. Justice doesn't come automatically. Sometimes you have to build it yourself, brick by brick, decision by decision, consequence by consequence. I built mine. The house was secure, the assets protected, the guilty faced results, the innocent, students needing help, received benefit, balance restored. I picked up my car keys, headed out into the September morning. The story was over. My life continued. And that, I reflected, was the truest victory of all. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.